Oh, wow. I just found a really interesting article just now, actually. Let me take a look here. Oh, perfect, perfect. Okay. All right, it's been a long time since we have gone over to AIPT and checked out X-Men Monday. Let's do just that now that Marvel has released the 1, 2, 3 punch this past week over with that Hallows Eve comic, exploring some of the elements of Limbo, the main Amazing Spider Man title, exploring those elements of Limbo. Plus, we have Dark X-Men over with Madeline Pryor, and we have the Dark X-Men writer responsible for it all, Steve Folks, in conversation with Chris Hassan on Adventures in Poor Taste. Plus, it looks like we even have some brand new news over on the upcoming Dead X-Men title, exploring some of the additional fallout from the Hellfire Gala. X-Men Monday 224 Halloween Book Club with Steve Folks, plus 6 exclusive and spooky images from upcoming Fall of X comics. Let's see here. So this is Adventures in Poor Taste. First question for the fantastic X-Men, Dark X-Men writer Steve Folks. When I first contacted you about participating in this year's X-Men Monday Halloween edition, I figured you might select one of the many times the X-Men have crossed paths with Dracula and vampires. But you actually picked the perfect comic book, 1996's Generation X 22, an actual Halloween issue. I forgot about this one as I bought and read it when it first came out, and I was probably in middle school. But this issue was top of mind for you. What made you want to discuss this one? Okay, there's an interesting Halloween read for any X-Men fans over in the audience here. Let's see what Steve Folks has to say about the 1996 Generation X 22. While I'm usually down for some Dracula discussion, and it looks like Marvel has lots of vampiric fun on the horizon, I do explicitly holiday set stories. In my other career as a writer of licensed kids' books, one of my goals has been to hit every holiday. Frustratingly, I've done Christmas, Valentine's Day, Pride, and Easter, but no Halloween. A shame, I say. Besides, there's never been a bad time to revisit Generation X, especially with some of its alums playing such a big role in the current era. It should come as no surprise that I can count several of them among my favorite mutants, and then I reach for them whenever I can, like in the pages of Dead X-Men, perhaps. Here's a really stirring cover over on Generation X 2022. There's this text written here. It says, "A nightmare of things to come." Oh, we'll talk about Dead X-Men, trust me. But before we dig into the Generation X issue, I mentioned all those times the X-Men have tangled with vampires. In 2021, X-Men senior editor Jordan White and I discussed the time the original five met Frankenstein. Also, you're currently writing the horror-tinged Dark X-Men, so my question is, what, in your opinion, is it about the X-Men that makes it easy for writers to mix in horror and the supernatural? I love stories that revolve around like horror elements, and I just really enjoy dark fantasy in general. And the way these X-Men comics really bring out those elements with characters like, Madeline Pryor as well as Limbo, I think is fantastic. Steve Folks says, "I wish I could say it's X-Men specific, but I think Capes and Tights tends to mix with Fangs and Hauntings pretty often. If you view superheroes as one distinct genre, a lot of our most beloved runs comes from crossing superheroes with neighboring genres. Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum liberally borrowing sci-fi staples in Uncanny X-Men to Jerry Duggan and Co. steeping Savage Avengers in sword and sorcery fantasy to Al Ewing and Leonard Kirk plopping Janet Van Dyne into a noir tale with Avengers Inc. I'm going to backseat Steve Folks on that one and say that is also a mystery-focused comic book. I've also loved the incredibly super hard sci-fi bend that Marvel is currently offering over with X-Men Red. If you look across all these Fall of X series, I think a lot of them serve really distinctive genres. Dark X-Men, definitely a horror comic, and Another really interesting element of Marvel's publishing line amid Fall of X is whatever interpretation the main X-Men series is going to take on. Sometimes the main X-Men comic is dark, sometimes it's silly. It just totally depends on the scene that they're in. If anything, you'd think horror would be the worst fit, since it tends to require victims who can't fight back on footing and death that feels somewhat permanent. Carol Danvers, on the other hand, could punch Jason Voorhees into space, which cuts some of the tension. Horror is a big fun umbrella, though, and I'm far from the only superhero writer who counts it among their favorite genres. It's only natural we try to bring some of the thrills and chills to the merry mutants. Butch1G, thank you for coming over on our stream today. He says, what's up? Have a great stream. Okay, back to Generation X 22. Upon rereading it, my major takeaways were, number one, every page is bursting with creativity thanks to mid-90s Chris Bachalo's incredible art. It's a sort of an in-between issue, touching on recent major events like Onslaught and setting up what comes next, while hyper-focused on characters and personal moments. What were your major takeaways? Steve Folks says, it's fair to say it's a transitional issue. If you come to it cold, reading the late Steve Richards is a bit of a jump scare all on its own, but that's also how all comics used to feel. Not to sound like Grandpa Simpson shaking my cane at the sky, but when I was a kid, you jumped into the deep end and learned to swim as you went. The idea that every comic could be someone's first better be good, not just so write it as if they're starting with issue 4 or 5 just in case. I don't think it's a bad thing to make comics accessible, mind you, but this was before every character and plot point had its own annotated wiki entries, and we managed okay. Even runs we think of as bursting onto the scene as big flashy jumping on points often felt pretty ingrained in what came before. The early issues of Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely's New X-Men mentioned Cyclops and Apocalypse being bonded several times. Wow, really stunning art across some of these issues here too. And I want to scroll down and see what else Steve Folks has to say about some of his upcoming projects like Dark X-Men here. Here we go. Because it's the Halloween edition, forget the Hellfire Gala. You're invited to the X-Mansion for a Halloween party. Which X-Men are you hanging out with for a night of spooky fun? Steve says, option 1 is asking Remy and Rogue to show me the cats and spending the entire night playing with them. Option 2 is tailing Cecilia Reyes so that when the party is inevitably attacked, she can protect me in her force field. Option 3 is ogling Kurt Wagner for the whole evening. Indeed, I think hanging out with Kurt Wagner could really make for some interesting fun over in an X-Men character here. Let's see if we have some more Dark X-Men coverage here. AIPT says, before we wrap up, Dark X-Men 3 goes on sale this week. What can you tease? Folks says, let me try to be vague and ominous. Prophecy. An oft-requested costume, an inferiority complex, an explosive confrontation, a stalking beast, a friend or foe in their midst, another X-Men gone, utter annihilation. That work? Yeah, that'll do. Finally, Marvel just announced your next X-Men series, Dead X-Men, just in time for Halloween. But these aren't more Marvel zombies, are they? In fact, this story sounds downright ambitious, so what can you tease about Dead X-Men? The trick-or-treating X-fans have their bags wide open, Steve. What do you have for them? There is so much potential in this Dead X-Men comic. The way that Steve Folks is bringing back some of these characters that actually passed away during the Hellfire Gala over for this comic book, I think, is super compelling. I'm really interested to hear folks talk about what readers can expect over in this upcoming X-Men tale. Ah, yes, I'm incredibly thrilled to reunite with Jonas, as well as a host of Krakoa's finest artists. You've only learned the tip of the iceberg so far for Dead X-Men, which is absolutely the most ambitious project I've worked on with Marvel. There's very little we can say before folks have a chance to read Rise of the Powers of 10 in particular, but I can drop a few tidbits. First off, as I tweeted, I'd consider this a 7-person cast. So let the speculation begin. I'll also say not to invest too heavily in the idea of zombies or even horror. Sometimes a teaser image is just that. In many ways, this is the purest X-Men story I've worked on, with a handful of mutants taking on an impossible mission across time and space. Claremont and Cockrum were top of mind at all times, as were Al Ewing, Jonathan Hickman, and Kieran Gillen, who have been wildly generous in developing this story. The mutants on our cast deserves a major showcase, and we've been working hard to make Dead X-Men the biggest, most spectacular X mission they could possibly undertake. Yeah, the way that folks talks about Dead X-Men is so fascinating here. He continues to reference this as one of the most ambitious projects he's taken on over at Marvel. And I'm wondering if this is going to be an even bigger series than Dark X-Men. Another element of Dark X-Men that I wanted to just mention here is that series is beginning to wind down, and I'm very fascinated if Marvel is going to follow it up with an ongoing series written by Steve Folks, because he's been working with Madeline Pryor. I feel like if you go back and check out the way that Marvel has assigned creative teams on books recently, even if the creator wrapped up their miniseries without the character, Marvel will still use that same creator for the ongoing series. So really interested to see how that one shakes out. And I'm also curious to see how Dead X-Men is going to relate over to some of these other X-Men comics being introduced very soon in the line here. AfroSF says, I'm old enough to remember the Wildstorm and Image Comics crossovers in the 90s. I love the Generation X and Gen 13 crossovers. Very cool stuff there. Another really interesting comic book mentioned from AfroSF. All right, I'll let you keep the rest under wraps for now. But on that note, thanks for stopping by X-Men Monday Halloween Book Club and taking the time to reread an X classic in chat. As for this week's exclusive preview images, X fans beware. I asked Jordan for an especially spooky batch this week. And we have some images teasing upcoming Marvel stories. This one, my guess is that this panel is coming from a future issue of Dark X-Men, and we're going to get to see this twisted version of Madeline Pryor over with Orcus in some future comics. And this one may be coming from the core X-Men series, as we've had Cyclops really captured over from Orcus in Tortured. And I believe this was a panel over from Miss Marvel, The New Mutants. That was actually a great series that we reviewed earlier this week here. Watching Miss Marvel embark on some of her dreams and fight back against Orcus was really, really thrilling here. Looks like over on this next panel, this must be from X-Men Red. The downfall of Richard Rider was really, really harrowing, and some of the lead up over to the Genesis War and seeing this destination over for Nova, I think is so, so harrowing on the page. Yeah, this was a great moment over with Uncanny Spider-Man, where Kurt was kind of battling some of his intentions with the younger versions of himself. Another really, really beautiful panel captured over from Marvel too. Haven't had the chance to catch up over with Wolverine this week, but once again, seeing Wolverine fight back against an Orcus agent also captured on the page with just mesmerizing detail here. Really excited to see the core Wolverine book enter into that ambitious Sabretooth story over here in the very near future as well. All right, let's go ahead and close out our stream with an interesting new discussion about a comic book that we've also explored in a lot of depth here. So this is none other than Marvel's upcoming Century comic book. We have an interview over with author Jason Liu talking about this upcoming series, which is actually looking to introduce the powers of the Century to new characters over in the Marvel Universe. Without further ado, let's go ahead and explore what author Jason Liu is bringing in store for this new series. Marvel is known for telling stories about the world outside your window, and the new Century series is a perfect example of that. What were your thoughts? What was your thought process when it came to creating backstories for these new characters that could potentially become the Sentry? This article is written over from Timothy Adams on comicbook.com. It was exactly that when I had the opportunity to introduce new characters into the Marvel Universe. I looked at what Stan and Jack did back in the day and imagined what stories they would tell of today's everyday people. Characters with their own struggles that are just trying to get by. Some of the inspiration comes from the people I interact with at my day job in a public library to even people on my work commute on the transit. One of our characters has cerebral palsy, so there was a lot of research that went into that. We also have disability rights activist Kara Leibowitz as our sensitivity reader to make sure Mallory, our character with CP, comes off as authentic as possible. I just want to give this opportunity to other people who normally don't see themselves in the genre finally feel excited to be represented. Really cool stuff coming in from Jason Liu over in this book. I love that Marvel is working with a sensitivity person as well as just people who actually interact with individuals like this to give as much context and nuance for this series as possible. Jessica Jones and Misty Knight. Aside from being investigators, what made Jessica and Misty Knight the right characters to be involved in Sentry's tale? Misty Knight was in Jeff Lemire's run on the Sentry, so in this new series, she continues her role as an aberrant crimes division agent who's trying to minimize the new catastrophic Sentry level events that are around the globe. Editor Alana Smith suggested Jessica as another possible character to use, which I think is perfect since her and Misty butted heads in Kelly Thompson's Jessica Jones run. So we have a bad cop dynamic between the two as I conjure up a good crime mystery from binge watching Law and Order. Yeah, very subversive use of Jessica Jones across this title here. Also, really gorgeous art featured in the comic book here. We have art coming in over from Luigi Zagaria. Earlier this week, we got to see some of the character designs for the new characters you'll be introducing alongside Luigi Zagaria. Did he come up with the designs, and did you have any input introducing into each character's everyday look? Thanks to my background as a comic book writer and artist, while I was writing the series outline and character profiles, I also had prepared some rough concept sketches as a guide to help convey the grounded tone of the characters. It's just easier for me to draw out the characters than writing a description of their facial features, hairstyles, fashion choices. When Luigi Zagaria came on board, who by the way is a far better artist than me, he brought in a ton of detail to these characters, making them feel fully realized. That's a really intriguing concept to introduce some new characters in the Marvel Universe. We really have Jason Liu kind of creating the rough drafts of some of these sketches, and the main interior artist, Luigi Zagaria, coming in and fleshing out some of the details over in the background. Is there anything else you want to leave readers with as a tease for what's to come in the Sentry? When I'm dealing with characters that can level buildings, that you expect to see some major players making an appearance over in this series. Sentry number 1 is set to go on sale December 6th. Appreciate the fact that we also get the tragic Bob Reynolds also featured in the background over on this page here too. So much texture, detail, and page layout across Luigi Zagaria's interiors over on this upcoming Sentry series. Also, really strong expressions, teasing the fact that these other characters that have Sentry powers are creating some really ambitious and creative scenarios over for some of these characters. All right, well, that was a quick glance over at this upcoming Sentry title. And let's take a very fast look over for some upcoming lenticular covers over for the upcoming Titans Beast World storyline. I think this one is just going to be a great and fun way to close out some of the elements of our stream here. We have Beast Boy, Black Adam, and Batman appearing on some of these covers over in Beast World. DC revealed the covers on its official X, formerly Twitter account. The Titans Beast World 1 number 1 is a lenticular cover that features Beast Boy, while Black Adam and Batman appear on the second and third issues covers. Clayton Henry and Marcelo Maiolo created the lenticular covers of these 3 issues. Titans Beast World by Tom Taylor and Yvonne Heiss is the next evolution of Dawn at DC, as seen by Clayton Henry and Marcelo Maiolo's lenticular covers for the first 3 issues. I've been so impressed with the main Titans book over from DC. I think the comic has just done an excellent job juggling so many different plot threads with really compelling characters like Wally West over in the comic book. Also, I just think some of the artwork over from Clayton Henry does just a fantastic job capturing on some of those character first elements of the title here. I really hope that Titans Beast World is going to be able to evoke the really strong potential over in that core Titan series. I've also really been enjoying the plot thread over with Brother Blood as well as Tempest. And once again here, I'm hoping that there'll be some follow-up to their characterization as well as we dive into some upcoming Beast World stories. There's something incredibly stoic about seeing a Black Adam turning into what looks to be a lion over on the page here. And on this final cover, we have Batman turning into what looks to be maybe a wolf version of himself here. Titans Beast World number 1 solicitation reads, clawing its way out of the pages of Titans comes an unprecedented threat to the DC universe. Superman, Wonder Woman, Starfire, all are powerless to stop the Necrostar from ending all life on Earth. The only hero who can save the world is Beast Boy. With Nightwing, Raven, Cyborg, and the Titans beside him, can Garfield Logan rise to battle an ancient evil? What will Amanda Waller do to take advantage of the situation as millions of people are changed into rampaging creatures? Can humanity survive all-powerful heroes and villains transformed into ferocious beasts? Friends will fall, heroes will rise, and nothing will ever be the same again. Earth is about to become Beast World. DC announced Titans Beast World as part of its company-wide Titan-centric event, Beast World at San Diego Comic-Con. Taylor explained the ambitious project in an interview with CBR. The project is called Beast World, and I can tell you that it is a giant event coming up in November of this year, specifically tearing its way out of what we've been silently building up. It's a very Titan-centered event, essentially to save the world from an ancient evil. Beast Boy becomes a Starro, transferring Garfield Logan into Garo, and he becomes lost by doing so. Yeah, I think Beast Boy is a character who naturally falls into the background of so many Titans-focused stories. Really getting the chance to see Beast Boy become this Garo character and try and save the rest of the Titans, I think is going to be a great way to explore his character. He creates spores like Starro all over the planet and creates animal-human hybrids all over the place. So we see things like Black Adam as a lion, tearing people to shreds, Taylor added. Taylor loved writing the Beast World story. I think as soon as I started writing Beast Boy for the first time, I realized just how lovable the guy is. His and Raven's relationship is a wonderful one. Also, in the core Titan series, the way that Taylor has continued to characterize Raven and Beast Boy's relationship has been a touching element of that title that's really contributed just such great nuanced character work over across the Titan series. Even before I began writing the Titans, I wanted to see just how far Gar's power could be pushed. I always felt like he was holding back. So I wanted an idea that could push Beast Boy into a place where only he could save the world. And it requires sacrifice and thinking outside the box, Taylor explained. Beast World #1 is available in comic book shops next month, exactly a month from today on November 28th. It's amazing that this storyline is set to just consume the DC universe in the very near future here. I think these lenticular covers are a great way to maybe pull in additional reader interest over to some of these titles. All right, well, I think that is just about going to do it over on our stream today. I want to thank everybody so much for stepping aboard here. Really hoped you enjoyed our exploration of Spider-Man across so many different contexts and so many different mediums here. I hope our opinions today weren't too spicy. I also hope that we gave you the context to really understand where I was coming from. I think a lot of narratives regarding the Spider-Man property take on so many similar characters, and I just really want to see something take on a hero like, Luke Cage, Spider-Woman, Daredevil, Madeline Pryor, and just weave them into a Spider-Man story. I really think that a lot of these other Spider-Man comics that we explore touch on too many of the same narrative elements. I'm really happy to see comic books like Uncanny Spider-Man take a few elements of the established Spider-Man concept and introduce all these X-Men and science fiction elements to really bolster the property as a whole here. We're going to have some more coverage tomorrow over on upcoming Marvel Comics. There's some really fascinating betrayals over in the next issue of Scarlet Witch that we're going to be covering in a ton of context tomorrow. Let's see here. What else will we be getting into? We didn't have time for Avengers Twilight today. We're going to be talking a ton about the alternate future Avengers Twilight storyline featuring work from Chip Zdarsky and Daniel Acuna. Thank you so much for coming to check out our stream today, and we'll be back tomorrow for even more comic book insanity. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon. Bye.